Hey there, this is Mango Sirene. I just got to play around with a sample of Thibra and I wanted to share my first impressions with you. This was my first time working with this new thermoplastic and I wanted to see how it compared to Black Wort, specifically if it can be used the exact same way. Needless to say, it was quite the learning experience. The first thing to note is that the surface of Thibra is completely smooth. It doesn't have any texture to it, which is great because this means no wood glue, gesso, or sanding, like we're used to when it comes to working with thermoplastics. Thibra is also a tiny bit thicker than Black Wort, but not by much, so you'll probably still want to layer it. Before heating, both materials are similar in flexibility. When it comes to stretchiness, it's a different story. Black Wort has decent elasticity, but it still tears pretty soon when stretching. As you're about to see, this is not quite true for Thibra. You see, when you stretch Thibra, it just keeps going, and going, and going. You can stretch it to the thinness of film before it rips, which means it will be great for any sort of complex curves and fine detail work. One of the main benefits of Worbla is that you can reuse scraps to make new pieces, but sometimes it can be hard to blend scraps back together seamlessly. Thibra scraps can easily blend together without any seams showing, and they fully retain their elasticity and smoothness, making it a perfect material for sculpting. Really, that's the best way to think about Thibra. It's thermoplastic that you can heat up and use like modeling clay, and it hardens back to rigid plastic. Because when you try to use it exactly like Worbla, you may run into some problems. For the sake of this test, I just made a super simple bangle based on the one Balsa wears in Moribito. I wanted to try a few different methods that are commonly used with Worbla, such as layering two pieces of Worbla together to create a thicker base without using craft foam, and using things like fabric cord and trim to create rounded edges. Those techniques work out great with Worbla, but I immediately ran into issues when trying to replicate it with Thibra. Namely, Thibra likes to stick to anything that has plastic in it, including my work surface, and you can't peel it off because it just stretches instead, and once it stretches, you can't unstretch it. So you have to be very careful about heating it up and not pressing it into your work table. I did find later that setting down wax paper can help. When I tried to make the rounded bands using the same piping cord, I found that Thibra will pick up even the slightest, faintest detail of whatever is layered underneath it. So unless you want fabric texture showing on your plastic surface, this method is out too. So instead, I tried using EVA foam strips that I had sanded into rounded shapes. Again though, if they're not perfectly smooth, Thibra will show all the lumps and bumps. Next problem, Thibra would rather stretch before it curves or bends, so without a solid base, you'll start to lose the structure when trying to heat form it. So let's start over, this time with a craft foam base. Making the cuff went much easier with the foam base, but once the bands were attached, I ran into an issue trying to put the cuff on. Once multiple layers of Thibra have been attached and it's cooled down, it loses a lot of its flexibility, so getting it on and off became nearly impossible without excessive force. Even so, I still wanted to do a paint comparison. For the sake of this test, I didn't prime either piece so I could compare their base textures. Like I mentioned, Worbla is infamous for its excessive priming stage to hide its sandpaper-like texture, but in spite of Thibra being much smoother, it comes with its own set of issues. As you can see, it retains every defect from the heating process, even fingerprints. The best solution, other than painstakingly smoothing everything with heat and hoping it doesn't stretch too much, will be using a Dremel tool to sand it down. So basically, pick your poison. Overall, those of us who are used to working with Worbla may find Thibra a little tricky at first, but I think it's definitely a material you'll want to add to your repertoire, especially when it comes to sculpting, making jewelry and accessories, and adding fine details to armor and props. I'm excited to do more testing with Thibra on some of my upcoming projects, so if you're interested, keep an eye out on my channel and Instagram where I'll be posting more videos and photos. This has been Mango Sirene with Artawigs, and as always, happy cosplay!